Happy New Year from the World Crypto Network. Today is Wednesday, the 6th of January, 2016. My name is Chris Ellis, and I'm joined here by some guests. But before we do, why don't we do the honors, as is tradition around these parts. It is currently block height 392,081. The Merkle route begins 5798 DE5, etc., etc. And that's a good timestamp. And I also wanted to do that today because I saw somebody the other day on Reddit saying, how do I timestamp my YouTube videos? And I put in the instructions. It sounds like it's becoming a thing. So why don't I introduce everyone? We've got a full lineup, even though I only decided to do this like 3 hours ago. I'm joined by my very special friend that I haven't seen in such a long time, Derek J. Dude, how are you doing and where are you coming from?
Mwah, mwah, mwah. Good to see everyone. Feliz año. I'm in Montevideo, Uruguay.
What are you doing there?
Well, you know, I'm living the dream, building a software company and learning how to start a successful, enjoying my January and 80-degree weather, and enjoying some trips to the beach. I actually just secured an apartment, so I'll be here for a few months.
Okay, great. So you're not living there like full time, but you're there for the foreseeable, are you? You're building something out there.
I am a Uruguayan for the time being.
Very, very cool. Well, I look forward to hearing about the software project. We're also joined by Theo. Come in, Theo. You're still in Frankfurt, I take it. Theo is not with us. But Tom, you're in San Francisco. Come in, Tom.
I'm in San Francisco. How's it going?
Thanks for joining us as well, because I know it's daytime for you. And Gabriel. Gabriel, thanks again for joining me as well. That's really cool to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me, and good tidings for the new year, loving kindness and wisdom to you all from the heart of Hollywood, where the rain is pattering down.
Oh, wow, that's a change. I thought it was only over blue sky. So, yeah, look, I really wanted to do this show as like say hello, just to say that I am now officially back at work. I'm back in the flat. If you are from Britain, you will know what this is. I've topped it up. This is an energy key. If you're poor and you can't afford proper electricity, they give you one of these pay meter things and you have to top them up. So I topped that up, so I'm ready to go. I've got my full nodes here. This is full node number 3. That if you were watching me in the conference in Hamburg, you saw the live demonstration. That's it running. You can see that if I just bring up the top command again, you can see that it's been running for 4 days straight. I haven't had it crash. We have had some users report back to us early because a lot of you guys obviously got your full nodes before Christmas. If you were one of the lucky sort of 18 people to get that, a couple of people have said it crashes every few days, and so already we've had. Let me just demonstrate to you what that looks like when people collaborate and they come together. And people just started posting on the Git repo, which is github.com/Mr.Chris/fullnode. The shorter link is fullnode.protip.is. That will get you there. If you click on issues, you'll see that people have just been posting issues. They've been saying, okay, I wasn't, one guy said, John said that he was having trouble getting it to send as well as receive block data, so he posted up some extra lines. This will very much depend on your individual circumstances. I was able to get Bitcoin to work just fine on my internet connection here at the flat and also at my parents' place, and they use 2 different internet providers, but different people in different regions of the world are going to have different experiences. And so we've also had this issue, as you can see, where Bitcoin crashes every 2 to 3 days or so and requires a restart. And already within a few days, we've had some Linux geeks come in, like MZ here, who said, oh, actually, you can just put this text into this file in this particular folder, and that will automatically restart Bitcoin whenever it crashes. So already the open source community, which is really what I wanted, I said from the beginning, I didn't want to own this project. I didn't want to just be in charge of it. I'm happy to be a hero and a champion and go out there and bang on the drum and do my videos and stuff, but I don't want to own this. There's no data, there's nothing, no software on these full node devices that phone home to any server. They are fully independent devices. What you're paying for when you pay me is you're paying for convenience. You could build this yourself using the instructions on the GitHub, or you can just pay me $140 and I'll build it for you and I'll do it live on air and give you a signed PGP certificate of authenticity. I'm probably not going to make any more than 500 in total. I will try my best to make all of those this year if there is demand for them, and if we are successful in achieving this goal, that will increase the Bitcoin number of full nodes on the whole network up by 10%. That's 10% of the whole network, and these are just small little devices that are very inexpensive and are likely to get cheaper over time. So yes, I did do, let me just recap on my Christmas, because some of you who've been following me will probably want to know what was going on. So yes, I am still obviously suffering from my migraine, which is why I can't speak as loudly as I used to, but I was at the 32C3, or the Chaos Communication Conference in Hamburg. I didn't have tickets. We sort of went there on a spur of a moment thing. Janine-Karina and I, my girlfriend, jumped on a bus from South Germany, and we jumped up, and we're so glad that we did. We got some amazing talks, and we met some amazing people there, and I also got to show my Fullnode project, which you can see here in this tweet. I put a link in the description below. It's the lightning talk, and I got to give a 5-minute demonstration in front of a packed audience in Hall G. It was a very big hall. It also got live streamed. It's also now available on YouTube. I was very happy with it. It took a lot of energy for me to prepare, because I only had a day and a half to prepare for it, but people were really happy. What we did after that, though, was really, really cool, because then we broke out, we went downstairs to do a live demonstration with the Fullnode, and we had Sam, or Soumitra from India, who is a regular on the World Crypto Network. You may not always get to see him on air, but he works very hard behind the scenes for us. He makes our SoundCloud audio files. He, I think he's done some transcription before, and obviously he tweets us out all the time. He works very hard for the network. Well, he did a great job of coming in live from India on an encrypted channel into the Fullnode, and then published an article on Snowden via IPFS, the new interplanetary file system that is installed on the Fullnode itself. So he was able to leak a document over a secure message without any state actor having any knowledge of that information to another person 6,000 miles away, or however far it is from India to Germany, without any intermediary having any knowledge of it, in such a way that that document could not be censored or altered, because IPFS is a permanent file system. Once you host something on IPFS, and once somebody receives it at the other end, you lose control to seize or take back that information. That information is now in that person's hand. So it's very different to the way the internet is currently structured, which is top-down, hub and spokes model, where you have these centralized services in the middle that are content delivery networks, essentially, like Facebook and Google and YouTube, that host all the content, and then all the consumers that just consume content. Now, little did you know, your browser is actually caching a lot of that content, but you don't really get to see what's going on under the hood. And you certainly don't get to host it. Your broadband providers will actually cap your upload limits. They will let your download limits run amok, and you can download as much as you want. But uploading is always limited, and that's because they don't want you to be entrepreneurial. If you want to be entrepreneurial, you've got to go through the right channels, you've got to jump through the hoops, you've got to tick all the right boxes. But IPFS completely changes that. It turns everyone not just into a consumer, but also into a producer, which is why I chose to put it on the device. So it's not just about Bitcoin. This has always been a story about publishing. I've been saying that from the beginning, that it's a distributed timestamp. It has the ability to prove the existence of any document anywhere in the world, and it can also be used to timestamp articles or things that you have published. You can then publish those on a system like IPFS using the hash as a reference, rather than, like, you know, bbc.co.uk or maybe a personal domain name which can be taken down or controlled. And then once you do that, you are free from censorship. You can speak freely. And so that's why I think this Fullnode project is such a powerful idea, because it's not just Bitcoin on its own. It's a whole bunch of other things. You've got encrypted chat on there. You've got Iceweasel, which is the Firefox version on the ARM processor. So it really is like a nice little toolkit, and we really want to encourage people to get involved at fullnode.protip.is. You can contribute code, you can contribute some bash scripts if you're a Linux boffin, and you can run some stuff on there. And then other people that buy the nodes are free then to install your code and to have their games. So as you can also see, later on this month I will be buying more Bitcoins. This is my bedroom here in North London. I don't know how long realistically I'm able to stay here, because obviously I'm only earning $3 an hour. But I have, this is the NSA cam. You can expect more from the NSA cam. I did go out earlier and get some discount food from Sainsbury's. Oh yeah. And I just realized also that my salt intake is really, really high, so I'm going to have to start taking potassium. Don't try this at home, kids. I do know that there are some young people watching this show. I want to give a big shout out to Oliver. Thank you very much, Oliver, for all your support, and hopefully you'll get a chance to teach us some Python later on this month, if not this year. Don't try this at home. Obviously, I am going to have to cut back on my food in order to be able to do this for $3 an hour. So please don't mimic what I'm doing. This is my own personal choice that I'm taking, but I will have to obviously take potassium to counterbalance the fact that I will be on a relatively high salt intake. But I'm determined to do it, and I think, you know, sacrifices have to be made. This isn't going to do it by itself, because you've got all these companies that are really just working for the interests of their shareholders rather than the interests of people and customers and things like that. So that's me. That's really what I wanted to say this evening, and I was just going to break it out to you guys and see what you guys were about, what you thought of the project, and what are you're all up to.
Well, I'm going to cut in and go ahead and go first. I wanted to start by giving a big pro tip thank you to Amanda from the Daily Decrypt. I'm not sure if you guys have checked this out, but she just put out a whole episode that's about ProTip. The entire episode. She details how you can use ProTip, how you can use the subscriptions mode in ProTip, and a lot of people haven't heard about the subscriptions mode yet, but you can subscribe to any Bitcoin address, public, private, your best friend, or your favorite YouTuber, and you can subscribe like $0.25 a week or $1 a week, whatever you want to subscribe, and Amanda demonstrates how to do this in this video, and I just thought that was really great, and I was going to tweet it out today and tell everyone about it, but just everyone, this is also a great example of how to promote ProTip. Because ProTip's an independent, open source project, we don't have a lot of money, we're not big venture capitalists, so we really need people like Amanda to step up and make their own videos. So if you want to help support ProTip, I give you the power to make your own tweet about it, to make your own email about it, to make your own video about it, to tell your friends, because we need your voice, we need your help. There's no one else. So if you're thinking you should be the one to go defend it in the comments, or you should be the one to talk about it on Twitter or Blab or wherever you are, do it. Promote ProTip. I'm giving you the ability. It's yours now. You always had it all along. And because of all of our work together, ProTip is up to 455 users on the Chrome extension, which is really incredible. I remember when this was 30, and I said, wow, look at it, it's 30. That's a lot of people. I barely know 30 people. And I said, though, it's never going to be this low again. We're going to make this number go up. We're going to get people to use this software, because this is about rewarding people, and that's what ProTip's about. I'm really excited about it. You can find out more at protip.is. And while I'm here, also, if you want to spend some money, spend Bitcoin, save money at purse.io. You can save like 20% on anything at Amazon just for spending Bitcoin. So, had to plug. But thanks, Chris, for having us. It's great to celebrate this new year with everybody, and I think it's going to be a really exciting one. We've got the halvening coming up. A lot of people think that's going to cause the price to go up, which always makes everybody happy. And also, Bitcoin's just becoming more a part of life. It can't be removed. It keeps dying, but it's not dead. So I just think that's really exciting, and I'm super excited that all these new faces on the World Crypto Network and new shows, and just everyone's excited about Bitcoin again. Maybe it's just the price, but I think it's just time. The more time you see that this isn't going away, the more calm and more, oh yeah, that's just a part of our lives now. We have Bitcoin. So go ahead. Who's next?
Yeah. Well, I just also wanted to pick up on your point there, Tom, that somebody sort of said earlier, I will download ProTip as soon as it's released on Firefox. And we said, thanks, we'll build it as soon as we get the funding. And to your point, you are in charge. You don't have to wait for permission. We are receiving donations. We built this initially we built it for $12,000, not $12 million. If anything, we're famous for not raising millions of dollars and squandering it on conference visits and all the rest of that wastage. We put this into hard work, and I said to Leo the other day in a meeting that we've got an advantage over all these other centralized, or these sort of centrally funded tipping apps, which is that they're into huge amounts of debt. They've got shareholders to pay, they've got VCs to pay who want 5 times what they originally put in, and they're going to be putting pressure on their employees, particularly their community managers, to drive engagement and get 1,000 new users a month. Well, what if 1,000 new users a month isn't right for your product or any of the customers? What if you're here to just make something work for a small group of people and actually just get it working for them first before it can scale out? Maybe you don't need to dominate the whole planet. Maybe you don't need to be big at all. Maybe you just need to be clear and relevant to a few people. So yeah, so that, you're absolutely right, Tom. And don't forget also, we're helping out Alakanani in Botswana. We're going to be sending her 2 nodes later this month, and I'm super excited about that because she's also asked us for some help getting an internet connection up and running at Satoshi Center. It sounds like the Bitcoin Foundation let her down, in spite of their vast sums of wealth, and they were doing lots of fancy conferences. I remember the Amsterdam one in 2014, and there was I didn't see much frugalism there. Let's put it that way. There was money around, and all she needed was $3,000 to set up Satoshi Center. I don't know who in their heart can't find it in themselves to separate with the measly $3,000 to help somebody who's in such need. So I said that I will help her on this round as well. So we're going to be raising $250 just to get Alakanani an internet connection. Sorry, I pronounced the name wrong. Alakanani an internet connection up and running. So now she'll have 2 full nodes that local developers can now learn to code on. Maybe, Oliver, if you're watching, you can help some of these coders in Botswana learn Python, and we can have some sessions here on the Google Hangouts, and you can teach them. And because they will have the full node running, they'll have access to the JSON RPC. That's Bitcoin's own native API. You won't need to rely on blockchain.info or any of these centralized. Not that there's anything wrong with these companies, it's just that they are dependencies. And when you become dependent on an entity, you are reliant on them. And of course, they want that because they can exert rent pressure and they can start charging fees and so forth. But when they go, or if they need to find lots of money from somewhere, usually what happens is the surveillance business model rears its head. And of course, they want to know all about you, where you're coming from, where you're spending your money. And we're trying to avoid that. We want people in other parts of the world to have independence for themselves. And we want them to define the APIs on their own terms. And we want them to be able to say, this is how we want our software to be written. We've given them the core infrastructure that they need with the Raspberry Pi and the basic elements involved. But then after that, they're free to write their own software. If they want to fork somebody else's software, that's okay from another part of the world, but it should be up to them and their choice. So I'm really looking forward to that kind of collaboration space. Who's next? Anyone?
I'll be next. I'm next because
Theo beat me to it. Go for it, man.
Okay, because I'm next to Thomas at least on my screen, so I guess I'm next, and I have a beard too, so that means I get to go. Yeah, Chris, it's important that you eat. So do not, I want you to eat enough food. Do not starve yourself on the node thing. I mean, we can get you a can of beans, and you can have baked beans and toast or whatever like they eat. And you got it right there. That's good.
Yeah, I got it. And they were on discount because they were broken. You see, if you look at the right place in the supermarket,
I like that.
On discount.
That's good to go. That's okay. So just eat some meals. Doesn't have to be luxury food.
No,
or
we just
like
basically got a lot of rice and some fish, and we stuck all the fish in the freezer. We just got in quantity,
Okay. Right, get like a 5-kilo bag of rice.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
something.
Yeah.
Ready to go. That lasts a long time. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So as long as we got that out of the way, want to wish everyone Happy New Year. Hope that you entered the new year safely and everything like that. And I want to thank everyone for supporting World Crypto Network and ProTip. Thanks a lot for staying with us this past year. As far as ProTip, of course, everyone knows. One thing that I always want to remind everyone is that it works everywhere. Does it work on SoundCloud? Yes, it works on SoundCloud. Does it work on YouTube? Yes, it works on YouTube. Does it work on MySpace? Yes, it would work on MySpace. You just add a Bitcoin address and it works, and that's it. You don't have to ask anyone permission. You just have to be able to post an address. That's all the permission that you need. So that is, I think, a real beautiful thing, and that's why I think it's a very important project, and that's why I think it'll last over time, because it's not dependent on very much. It's dependent on you and me on actually using it, but we're not dependent on anything else besides that. So that's pretty cool, and you can build on it. So if you are, just sure everyone said it, but if you are a developer and you think, I like ProTip, but I don't like the heart logo, or I don't know, I don't like the color, or whatever, then you can change that up. Also in December, I was over at blab.im. I was on something called Micro Bitcoin Summit. It was just like a bunch of videos, kind of like we have here, but just like one after another. And I did talk about ProTip there, so you can go there and check that out. It's pretty easy to find. If you just search for Bitcoin, you should be able to find it. And that was pretty cool, and different people talking about different, ways of tipping and monetizing and stuff like that, and how it's possible to do it and what options there are. So that was pretty cool, because there's also a lot of people that were not really into Bitcoin, but they're into doing videos or whatever, and they're Bitcoin curious, let's say. So it was pretty interesting to see, their reactions and what they're doing. So what was cool is the host that was interviewing me did her research and actually downloaded ProTip already, and I was pretty impressed. And she clicked on my profile, and she's like, "Oh, the heart did the thing," and she didn't really know anything about Bitcoin, but she had the software, so it does work, and it is easy to use. So it did pass a small test of a non-nerd person using it. Like we said, maybe it's okay if we have a little group first, like the nerds come first. But so I thought that was an interesting little thing that happened, and yeah, that's all I've got. And maybe Derek, you can go next. It looks like you're next in the block here.
Namaste, thank you, sir. It's I'm glad to hear that Fullnode is growing so well, and it sounds like an awesome product. I will definitely be buying one this year. I know I could set it up myself, thanks, Chris, but I'm happy to contribute to the project, and also that ProTip is growing. It's in the hundreds now. I love that it's so customizable. So I didn't realize, as we were talking about the New Year and Christmas, that Chris was going to be Santa this year. Doing all of this work that he's doing with ProTip and Fullnode. Very cool. I love the idea that it's organic growth, that it's not something that needs millions of dollars and a bunch of fancy offices. It's like, we're going to start serving the people where they are, the niche people who really know how to use this product and will appreciate it, and then let it organically grow from there. It's a really great plan. It sounds very power to the people. So for those who have followed the Bitcoin group and the World Crypto Network, they know me from making YouTube videos about using Bitcoin. And when I moved to San Francisco recently, I sort of got the bug of the software business bug, and I have been excited learning how to build my own software company. And so that's what I've been doing with my partner, Steven. We created zensoftware.co so that we can make software for people who are underserved businesses that need automation software that's going to make their lives easier and solve their pain. So that's what we've been working on, learning how to build this business and taking it one step at a time. We're finding our markets there. So zensoftware.co is the new website. And I'm just glad to see the World Crypto Network grow. It sounds like everything is going really well, and it's good to see all these shining faces. So thank you for all of your incredible work. I bow to you.
No, that's cool. Yeah, we got the Zen page up on there on the screen. That looks really cool, man. Are you doing blockchain-related stuff here, or is this just general software services?
It's general software services. There hasn't been a specific market for Bitcoin-related stuff. Of course, I still use Bitcoin in my personal life. I'm in Uruguay right now, as I mentioned before, and used Bitcoin in order to get here. What was that? Yeah, and we used local Bitcoins right here, to check it out. Can we use Bitcoin to buy things locally? Opened up the app, and yeah, there are some who will exchange local currency or U.S. dollars. There's even in the center of the capital, there's a storefront that apparently has a Bitcoin ATM, and they do exchanges right there. So we went jogging and saw that. It was pretty cool, and I was able to meet up with people who use Bitcoin here. Even when we secured our apartment earlier today, we were talking with the realtor, the real estate agent, and she was saying how frustrating currency, and that it's pretty new that they're even able to use cards to swipe for things. And so she had us write down on the back of the lease agreement, like, what is this, Bitcoin? Okay, yeah, we're going to check that out. So hopefully people will be able to buy and rent properties for Bitcoin in the near future.
That sounds fantastic. And what I do love about Bitcoin is the way that it has this kind of rhizome. You know what a rhizome is in biology? These little plants like strawberries that prop up you know, almost suspiciously simultaneously, all these little sprouts come up in lots of different locations, but it's not a coincidence. It's all coming from a single source. You just can't see the source. And that's the amazing thing about Bitcoin, is it has the same impact on people all over the world because there's something very truthful about it at its core, that it allows this. And I did the same thing as you, Derek. Like here in North London, I was walking down the road a couple of months ago, and I just saw this sign on this independent shop saying, "We take Bitcoins." It was just a small independent shop, but it was like, you know, big enough that I was like, I had to tweet that out. I was like, it's happening, you know, it really is a real thing. So I think you're absolutely right, and power to you for like helping distribute the network as well out there in Uruguay. That sounds amazing. And also the more of these countries that aren't the US and Europe that we can get Bitcoin into, the better, because right now there's a high concentration in Western Europe and America. So, you know, that's what we're all about, is decentralization. So speaking of decentralization, Gabriel, what have you got for us, man?
Well, this conversation, you know, has really brought some interesting ideas into my mind, and I knew it would. But I want to mention quickly before I launch off that I actually tweeted Derek, and I was like, hey, well, you know, why did you move to Uruguay? And he's like, you know, various reasons. So maybe we can get into the legal climate there after I'm done with my spiel and talking your ear off. But, you know, because that's really interesting to me, you know, the relationship between lifestyle, technology, and governmental regulation, things like that. So, but the concept that has really like crystallized for me during this conversation through Chris's projects, really the theme kind of that's coming through my mind is the concept of leverage. And there's a lot of different ways to look at that. There's a lot of different aspects to leverage, but I think the first one that I'd like to mention with a great deal of gratitude and humility is the will and intention, personal energy and sacrifice that, Chris, you have given to humanity, to the Bitcoin ecosystem more specifically, in just getting the ProTip and Fullnode projects off the ground and doing them. And that's just such a really important principle for every individual to leverage in his or her life. So thank you for that, Chris. And so from that launching off point of human will, intention, and into the world, there's so many different ways to do that. And I think one of the great things that you've done with the ProTip project, for example, is leveraging design. And by design, I don't just mean like user experience design, which you guys have done really well. By the way, I've become the 455th user of the extension. I'm also a Firefox user, which is why I haven't gotten around to it till now. But actually, this is like a good enough reason for me to go back to Chrome, which I was like, oh, Chrome, you know, Google, they're looking at everything and fuck them. But now that there's ProTip, and by the way, I love the heart. I think it's just exactly the right icon to use for the extension. But leveraging design for ProTip, I read an interesting article recently about conceptual design. I'm in the user experience field. I talk about that a lot, and you know, it's all about, you know, making it easy, making it accurate, making it consistent for users. But before user experience design must come conceptual design, which is, what the fuck are we trying to do? How do we do that? So, but what are we trying to do? What exactly are we trying to do? If you don't take enough time to define your goal with a project, you're going to have so many, it's going to proliferate out into infinity, your problems. And just as the opposite, if you take the time to define your goals very well and your concept and make it really clear and lean, and it doesn't have any extra components and it's got balance, then everything will proliferate out perfectly and will go, you know, with very few bumps. And I think that's what Theo was touching on in his comments about ProTip, which is ProTip is an extension for users who want to donate. What you guys did was made it as low labor as possible for the receiving end. So artists and stuff, they don't have to do anything. If they're Bitcoin-ish, you know, if they're in Bitcoin, if they know anything at all about it, they've got an address somewhere in the code on the front end of their page. They don't have to do shit. Users, we have to install an extension and set up a couple things. you made it as easy as possible, but you put all the work on the client who's paying and zero of the work on the receiver, which is exactly the concept. You guys did the conceptual design, and you probably together with your programmer did the conceptual design before you even thought about user experience. And so then once the conceptual design was done, the user experience is a foregone conclusion almost. I mean, you just have to do the basics, and it's just a step-by-step process. Makes it very simple and effective. And if so, before I move on to another type of leverage, before conceptual design, of course, which is something that Chris, you talk about a lot, is morality. So you've got moral design before the conceptual design. So you thought, okay, well, how do we want to, leverage? How do we want to help publishing in the world? How do we want to disintermediate the advertising surveillance complex? How do we want to help the world through the technologies that are already at hand? They just need to be hooked together. That's really the engineering intention, the engineering motivation.
Well, before
moral
you're an
design.
engineer, just to jump in, I mean, before you're an engineer, you're a human. And to
Right.
be human means to be. It means that you're with other people. It's very difficult to be alone as a human. When you're born in the company of your mother. And you very seldom leave the family unit in the first few years of your life. So actually being alone is an effortful process, something that you have to go out of your way to do. And by the time you're 5, you've already got an ethics, okay? Because you've already got basic a priori intuitions about the universe, right? When you let go of something and it falls to the ground in the living room, you don't think to yourself, oh, this is a feature of the living room. You assume non-locality. You assume that this is a truth that is everywhere. And you start to become a moral agent when you start to build up a rule set, when you start to see how other people behave and you decide how you should behave. And this is what you are before you're an engineer. The user always exists inside of your head as an engineer. It is not a real user. And when Gavin Andreessen was going on about the block size thing, and he's like, users want this, users want that, I wanted to smack down in there. It's like, you're begging the question. How do you even know that's what the users want? Because the user you're conceiving of is just the one in your head. And if you just go out there assuming that people are stupid, that they just need dumbing down, that we need to set up servers for them, you're completely missing the paradigm. The fact is the world has always been peer-to-peer, like Rock Barcelos demonstrated so well in that cartoon strip that he did. We've been peer-to-peer since the beginning. Actually, Bitcoin gets to something very primal in us, and that's what we were trying to do with ProTip in a moral way. We were just trying to say, I'm just trying to facilitate a transaction between one person and another anywhere on the planet. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm not here to get in their way. I'm not here to slow it down. I'm not here to turn a profit unless I've got something right. Did I understand something true about the underlying nature of reality? If I did, the free market will return me a profit. Of course it will. It just won't be enough to support a champagne lifestyle and big building and lots of employees and lots of conferences, but I'm okay with that because I'm okay with just living within my means and living basic lifestyles.
Yes, and I mean that's exactly what I meant by moral design. Like you're coming at things from a human perspective, and the leverage of that is a moral leverage. Just like you have a conceptual leverage with ProTip, where people can grok what you're trying to do quickly, and it will proliferate into networks as a result. You also have moral leverage, where people can grok. Because it's part of Bitcoin and because it's open source, people can grok, this can help me, the other person, and everybody else. So touching upon the technology briefly, I love how you've leveraged existing, grok, exactly, to understand profoundly through intuition, right? So I love this word. A stranger in a strange land, I believe it was coined in. It's like a Martian term or something. So the technology that you've leveraged is fantastic, and I just love. First of all, you mentioned the JavaScript RPC, which I actually developed JavaScript and stuff, and that is just so awesome. That's what I believe. The 21 guys kind of built a layer on top of that to sort of.
Well, they built a Python library, which is very cool. But there are other Python libraries already available. I mean, I don't have a strong objection to what 21 are doing, and I guess I should comment briefly on that because this isn't like in any way like people obviously made the connection between ProTip and ChangeTip that it was like a protest demonstration against ChangeTip. Well, not really, because I'd had the idea from long before ChangeTip anyway. I was actually trying to give it to ChangeTip for a long time, but they wouldn't take it. So then I ended up doing it myself. Well, what's the business model, right? How are you going to make $2.5 million, doing something like ProTip? You're not, okay? And then likewise with this Fullnode project, we're not having a go at 21. I don't have a robust, objection to what they're doing, other than, it's very expensive. For basically $140, they're charging $400, plus obviously the miner. You don't get the miner with my one, but you can buy a miner off of eBay for like $15, $20 or something. It's not a difficult thing to do. And the problem that I had with 21's software is that they put artifacts in the Linux, their brand of Linux, their flavor, their distro, has like, instead of apt-get for the package manager, it's 21get. And I'm like, oh, come on, grow up, like that's just great. That just gets on my nerves. Like, don't change what already works. Don't put features and artifacts into open source code to brand it and make it yours. Like, just embrace the fact, like, I'm giving people Debian Wheezy. It's a very popular one of the oldest distros on the planet. There is a ton of documentation on DuckDuckGo. If you go to duckduckgo.com, it's a great search engine, much better than the old one. I can't even remember what it's called now. It begins with a G, I think. And you can search to your heart's content and troubleshoot to your heart's content without coming to a brandname.co or whatever, right? You don't have to come to me looking for the solutions, because there are a ton of bloggers already that have said, this is how you auto-mount a USB stick on Linux. You don't have to. I haven't put any artifacts into the operating system that stops it from working. And that's because I don't have this business model where we need to make some guy 5 times richer than he started. We don't have these kind of pressures. We're not in any debt. We basically just done work, talked about it, and then other people have cottoned onto it. Did you notice that BTC China, after we did our Fullnode project, did a press statement saying that they've released 100 or so Fullnodes across the world? So I went ahead and looked at their Fullnodes, and they're just AWS instances. They're just Amazon instances. And so it was like, let me just see if I just happen to have it up. No, I don't happen to have it up. But yeah, they was in CoinDesk, and I was just like, oh, come on, guys. Like, you're just trying to cash in on the SEO, right? Like, you've seen that the Fullnode hashtag is really popular, and so it's no skin off your nose just to fire up some AWS instances. You probably had them there already, because they need them running as an exchange. They need Fullnodes running. And yeah, because they need to be able to detect double spends. That's why they do it, in case you're wondering. They need to be able to see if somebody's going to double spend, and they have to have kind of all this data. And also, don't forget that the Bitcoin, when you run a Bitcoin Fullnode, you're going to get a debug.log file in that data folder, right? And that's going to be persisting all the IP addresses of the nodes you connect to. So if you want to surveil the Bitcoin network, that's a strategy that a lot of agencies are employing, is just by setting up lots of nodes around the world on these different AWS instances or Scalaway or DigitalOcean droplets, whatever they're choosing. And what they're able to do is gather data about all the nodes that are close to them on the network, and they assume that a lot of people aren't going to be using VPNs or Tor, for example. The Fullnode does come with Tor enabled. You do need to do a little bit of configuration before it works fully with Tor, but the Tor daemon is running when you boot up for the first time, and away you go. You've already got banking, publishing, anonymity, privacy preserving, chat messenger apps, like for $140. Like that's a bargain, and I've even given you all the instructions for you to build it yourself. And I want really to create a movement so that more people. We know, Gabriel, didn't we have that debate on Twitter when I was at the conference about whether or not people entering text into Google is any different to entering it in a command line? And then I think it ended with me going, doesn't entropy tend to increase in an isolated system? Like do you want to talk a little bit about that, and about how, because I think the comment came from a presentation I was watching where a guy said people are happy to enter text into a Google search engine, but they're scared shitless of entering it into a command line. And I sort of tweeted out saying it was funny, and I kind of agreed with it, and you were like, no, this is misrepresentation, because actually a command line is kind of scary. Your thoughts on it?
Oh, okay. I took your comment at face value on Twitter, and you were kind of just making a jaunty, sort of humorous remark in response to something that I hadn't seen. And so I just took it completely face value, and I was like, no, not really. So basically our discussion was, the different, he was comparing, why can't they just copy and paste our code into the command line, and why are they so scared of it when, you know, they copy and paste the URL into Google? And of course, you know, command lines do stuff. Literally with one line of code, you could completely erase your hard drive. You know, people are legitimately scared to do powerful things, and that's why we have user experience design. That's why we have front ends to software. That's why we have human interface design and information architecture. So, you know, these are really, really important things, and I think, you know, as is typical with any new software protocol, the beginning is, you know, made for engineers to understand. Then as the use cases build up and as the usability increases, you know, regular non-engineers and non-scientists and non-technical human beings can leverage that technology. So I think we're right at the beginning of that curve now, where we've got usable wallets, and now the other, you know, we've got Purse.io as a usable service. ProTip has a usability to it. OpenBazaar, I don't know if you've seen any screenshots. I know they're still in beta. I don't think it's actually launched officially yet. Maybe it has, but they're beautiful. I mean, you take a look at the default store for OpenBazaar, which is, of course, the open source decentralized marketplace like eBay, sort of, that runs on Bitcoin. Just beautiful. It's going to be, I bet you it's going to be very, very simple to set up a, I can't wait to sell, you know, my stuff that's sitting around my house that I want to get rid of on OpenBazaar. So that's kind of what our discussion was about. But if I may, I'd like to go on to one more leverage point, which definitely relates to what you're talking about. Well, two more, actually. The first of all is on the technology side. I just love, I mean, by doing, you know, 500 of these nodes, or even 100, I mean, you're measurably impacting the full node array in the world. I mean, with only one man, you know, you have been making these things with the help of other people, but really the full node project that you're doing is really based on you. You can have a 10% effect on the amount of full nodes out there, and like you pointed out, have the moral power. The more you're leveraging that morality, and you're guilting these for-profit companies into following you down that path begrudgingly.
Well,
because it's a loss leader.
What we're doing, well, guilty in the German word is schuldig. And schuldig means to owe money to. It's a debt. I knew that before I went to Germany because I studied Heidegger. But in Heidegger, you know, the word guilty is schuldig. And what he's trying to say, and what the German language is saying, is that you now owe something. So I don't think of it as the English word guilty. I think of it as, you know, if I'm doing anything to these startups in Silicon Valley, I'm making them schuldig. I'm making them responsible, and they owe something. I'm creating something on the loss side of the balance sheet. The P&L, I've just put in a new line item on the L, and now they've got a loss, and now they've got to recoup that loss. And that loss is the lack of authenticity. Like, the community managers in Silicon Valley fucking are terrified of this network, are terrified of people like me and Theo and Tom and all the rest of it, because we hold these people accountable, because we tell the truth early and we tell it to the people that need to hear it first. And the problem is that then all that community managers are like, yeah, but you told me not to talk about that. I'm not allowed to talk about that. Yeah, but these guys are saying it already, so now you've got to, like, you know, you've got to keep breaking the rules. Well, the problem is with this top-down system where you're not giving the people control is that they always have to get permission, which increases latency, which then increases inefficiency. And business is all about seeking efficiency. And business is just a sequence of activities where a group of entrepreneurs come together and anticipate demands in a market. That's all it is. It's very, very simple. And if you can't do that, then you're going to lose out to a competitor who can do it much faster, more efficiently than you. And that's what this is about. So it's not really just about my moral leverage. It's actually about you, too, at home watching this. Remember the words of Aaron Schwartz, right? It starts with you. You've got to be the one that actually, like, takes the initiative and builds your own full node. I mean, fuck it. Fork my project and build 1,000 full nodes, right? Like, take me on. And give me a run for my money, right? I doubt that anyone will be able to do it, because I doubt anyone will put themselves through the same kind of, you know, struggle that I've got to put myself through to do it. But if you're up for it, I'm up for it, you know. Just go ahead and fork the project. I put all the instructions on my GitHub. There's actually more instructions still to come, because I still need to flesh it out a little bit. But once that's up there, it's anyone's for the taking.
Yeah, I think that the words you made them feel, you made me feel, I made X feel should be banned from the human language. They're completely from the English language. They're completely inaccurate. I definitely did not mean to suggest that you were the one that made them feel guilty. What made them feel guilty is their own debt. You just enlightened them, or enlightened the world to the fact that, hey, there's this loss leader element of the Bitcoin ecosystem that is not incentivized, and the big companies that are hoping to make millions and millions of dollars aren't even giving 0.00001% of their funding toward strengthening the relay network for Bitcoin. And so now they're oh yeah, we have this debt. Oops. So of course, a for-profit entity is going to try to skate along as long as it can without recognizing its own debts. But that's the job of the people, is to point those debts out. So that brings us on to the last point of leverage that I was kind of writing down while everybody was talking, which is the networks. I mean, like you pointed out, there's a hierarchy. There's a war going on, a one-sided war of hierarchies trying to fight and defend against networks who are simply just doing their own thing and ignoring the hierarchies. And it's that you're leveraging that network by creating open source software and by creating ProTip, which is really, it has a bit of a network feel to it in the sense that you can, well, I guess it's more just on the communication side, where you find out about ProTip and then you can use it and it's free. That's the original type of network. It's like a language in a village arising, like, oh, you're using these words. It's totally free. Everyone just shares them. So I love how you're leveraging the power of the Bitcoin network to for this project.
Yeah, well, no, I appreciate all your kind thoughts, and also very erudite as well, as always. I've come to expect that from you, Gabriel. No, that's really cool, and I also loved your comments about, because a lot of this project is, to go back to that previous point, about helping people lose some of that anxiety in the face of the command line. That actually what the presenter, which you obviously didn't have the context because I wasn't giving you all of the whole picture, but what he was demonstrating was that he'd come up with a way of publishing to build this giant library. And yes, unfortunately, the software does require 2 lines of code in the command line. But his point was that it was only 2 lines, and they're there. People. He had this even funnier line after that one, which was that people often turn around and say, no, we're civilians. We don't want to use command line, right? Almost as if we're at battle as engineers, because we were actually fighting the affordances of the universe. We're fighting. Really, the engineering is the background between us as engineers and our understanding of the universe and the way it works. The same way the patient is the battleground between the doctor and their understanding of medicine. Okay, it's a very similar thing. And when you're in engineering, you're in the business of fault tolerance. You're in the business of meeting the needs of a human with the affordances of the natural environment, which requires you to have empathy with the human, and it requires you to understand that environment and what its capabilities are, what the resources there are available. And so really that's what we've done, and a lot of that, and what I'm making at the moment in a spreadsheet, is a new way for you to be able to contribute your ideas to ProTip. We already have the document ProTip improvement proposals. Well, I'm going to upgrade it now so that every feature request is marked in one of or any of 3 categories. Does it make us money? Does it save us money? Does it increase awareness? Because those are the 3 properties that any business undertakes at any given time. You're either making money, saving money, you're increasing your awareness. Those are 3 things. So every time someone comes up with an idea like build a Firefox extension, we're like, that's great. That's going to make us money. And this is how much it's going to cost. Because if this is going to be run by the community, people have to understand how much these things cost. If this gets done in a big organization, they're going to obscure the costs. And they're going to have offset business models where they're going to let one part of the company be really profitable and then take some of the profits and shift it over here. They're going to have loss-making elements. And the problem is it obscures the true nature of things. And the problem is that's okay for a while. Like if you want to bootstrap yourself as a startup, that's perfectly fine. Cash is king in startup world, right? But the problem is if this allows to continue unabated for too long, like we've seen with Twitter, where now they're thinking of doing away with the 140 character limit, you end up stripping away your existential core. You're no longer who you were originally because you're too busy trying to meet metrics that you can't possibly meet. If the universe can't afford your existence, then you either need to die or you need to try and somehow redefine what your existence really means. And I don't think personally, like in the case of Twitter doing away with its 140 character limit, that's entirely necessary. I think the reason they're doing it is because their share price is suffering and they need a way for the price to go up, and it's not enough like Facebook. Well, no, duh, it's not Facebook, it's Twitter. There's a reason why. And actually that concision and the forcing you to use 140 characters was a pretty good feature, actually. So anyway, I won't ramble any longer because we do have a genius with us, which is Blake Anderson. We already had several geniuses with us, and now we've got another genius with us. We've got Blake Anderson. Dude, come in. Are you on the mic?
I'll be like in Rick and Morty, where I'll be Morty, and I'll cancel out your genius waves so that the government can't track us down, and I'll be like a good cloaking device in that regard.
That's a genius thing to do.
I know, right? Like, you know, I got it from a cartoon, but I'm gonna take credit for sure, because that's what geniuses do. Steal shit from cartoons and take credit. That's what the future's about. I thought it was interesting what you guys were saying about incentives and decentralization and accountability and stuff, and I wanted to throw in there that there's some people that are talking about accountability versus decentralization and like where the two merge and like how non-decentralized you can be and still have accountability be basically worth a damn. And so that's really, really interesting to explore as well, to see, you know, how much can we outsource accountability from the individual, and how far do we get before we have, you know, a fatal collapse of accountability itself. So that was kind of my nugget that I wanted to toss into the fire here and have everybody fight over.
Yeah, it's great to have you, Blake. I have something to say about that, and I'd love to hear what Theo says, but that reminds me of what I call old finance, which is our current financial system where everybody's trying to basically, it's almost like the agency problem, just, you know, concretized in the world. It is the old finance is the agency problem itself, and so everybody's trying to shove the buck here and there and everywhere, and basically, you know, you're just setting yourself up for a collapse when that happens.
Well, yeah, and agency and contract law are just all messed up. There's a whole bunch of, you know, mutual assent is not required. Like, you know, the bank can have a bunch of fine print, and even though this is the underpinning of our financial system, we don't need to have mutual assent being engaged in here by the people that are, you know, transferring value around. And that's like, okay, you think that the people aren't smart enough to be educated in how complex your scam is, to the extent that you just say mutual assent is no longer possible. And now it's just no longer needed. It's like, okay, so the underpinning tenet of contract law is too steep a requirement for your system. I mean, I think that, you know, untenability is undeniable there at that point. And I think that these new systems that are an alternative from that are funny, where we can come back and say, hey, here's a criticism of this, and yes, that's not something that you can just say, well, you know, that's a platitude. It's a criticism of everything. And as we, you know, continue to make better systems, we can have, you know, real teeth to our criticisms of some of this ridiculous stuff that the old systems aren't able to, you know, hold water relative to their arguments in favor of their nonsense, kind of.
Well, yeah, I like your term mutual assent, actually. I've not heard it much in the past, but I think that's unique with you, is it, Blake? And this is the idea that when I enter into an agreement with someone, that we should both be rewarded as a result, that it shouldn't just be like this win-lose paradigm.
Oh, well, but that both people should understand also that there's a true meeting of the minds. And you're right, there's definitely an aspect of, if somebody's totally getting like hosed in an agreement that's like binding, people can be like, obviously they didn't understand what was going on, or they would have been like,
right.
No. So there's a whole bunch of things that can help people see that mutual assent is probably not struck very cleanly in any given situation, and for that to all just go in the garbage relative to the banking system, like, well, we'll just, you know, make $1 billion in fees for people with overdraft that don't have any money and stuff like that. And, you know, maybe they didn't really agree to that, but mutual assent is not required for banking contracts, so whatever, we'll just make a lot of money off of the poorest people in society. And as that all comes to a head now, especially with the economy becoming as thin as it is at the beginning of this new year, I think that it's great to have a new system to look at and say, look at the new system versus look at the, you know, requirement of throwing mutual assent in the trash before to have a financial system, and it becomes pretty comical.
Oh, I see. It is actually a legal term, in fact, consensus ad idem. from the Latin. It means mutual agreement or mutual assent. It's a phrase in contractual law used to describe the intentions of the parties forming the contract. Yeah, well, that makes sense, because I think what's happened, particularly with contract law, is that because access to justice costs so much money now, you have to pay a lot of money to a lawyer in order to get justice. Essentially, there is no justice anymore, because if justice costs money, then you have no access to justice, therefore there is no justice. You see, you haven't really solved the problem. And this is the point that Vinay Gupta makes a lot in his talks, when he often says the phrase, you can't have free markets without free people. Actually, let me correct myself. He phrases it as a question when he says it. He says, can you have free markets without free people? Because what he's trying to do there is he's trying to get you to think. And he's trying to get you to ask the question. And this is the problem I had at Porkfest when I was surrounded by all these libertarians who thought that they had all the answers. They read the books. They've decided. They made their minds up. They weren't open to any persuasion. There was no real to and fro. It was just like, I'm telling you how it is. And it's like, yeah, but hang on, dude. Like, no, you're not an anarchist anymore, because you're not really, like, you just want to be the tyrant. Like, you want to be the boss. You think you know all the answers. Like, the point in life when you think you know all the answers, that's it. You're done. Like, you're finished as a philosopher. You're not going to learn. You're not going to grow. You're not going to, like, ask questions and seek new knowledge. That's not loving wisdom, man. That's hating wisdom. So, yeah, like, you always have to grow. And I love this emphasis that Blake puts on the mutual assent, because I think that has been lost in a lot of contracts, and contracts really are now about control. The first thing any company wants you to do when you walk into their offices is sign a non-disclosure agreement. They won't even talk to you unless you sign
everything.
it.
For everything. Yeah, so I just wanted to say real quick, I've been a little distracted. I've been editing a video, multitasking here, ladies and gentlemen, live on air. I've been editing a video for World Crypto Network, and I've been talking in the live chat to you guys watching us at the same time. And some people asked, I want to join World Crypto Network. And so what I did is I did put a link to the Slack. I do believe you'll be able to sign up. If for some reason you can't figure that out, get in touch with us on Twitter, and then you can come in the Slack, you can chat with us, and maybe you can have a meeting of the minds with someone and come to an agreement about a show where both people benefit, just like we were talking. That's what it's all about. So it's pretty, there is not a real formal structure, but it's just like, come on in, talk to people. Maybe you can be a guest on someone's show if you're really motivated, and test it out, see how it is. But best step would be to come on to our Slack and just talk to everyone, tell them. Or also even better is just take the first step, make a YouTube account or whatever, record yourself, make a little video about whatever you want to talk about, and that's always a real good first step. So just go on and do that. That's how everyone started here on World Crypto Network. They just did stuff themselves. So that's definitely possible. As far as the accountability thing, that's also related to the nodes, because like I said, if all the Bitcoin startups watching now, do you run a full node and you're a Bitcoin startup? You probably don't. You need to get one, because you need to be accountable for the Bitcoin that you're sending here and there, that you are the person auditing those transactions. You're not relying on a third party. Okay, maybe the same VC funded the third party you're using. Still, you should run your own node, because you should be responsible for the Bitcoin that you're sending around. If you're a Bitcoin startup, you probably are doing something. So I encourage all Bitcoin companies, etc., to run a node. That makes total sense. That's accountable.
A lot of the companies in the space do run full nodes, just because they're exchanges or they're the people that handle some of the transactions, and so it's necessary for them to do it. It's just, I did actually find that article in the end. We have to kind of rush through because there's a few things I want to fit in, including Janine-Karina's recommendations of the best talks at the CCC. But before I do that, this was the press release that was put out on Boxing Day, actually, on the day after Christmas Day, if you celebrate that, saying that they'd launched 100 full nodes across 5 continents, except when you actually go to look at their full nodes, you'll notice that all AWS, Amazon instances, this is not the same thing as running full nodes. Look at the IP addresses, 52, 54, 54, 52, 52, 52, 52, 52. These all are existing in the same IP space. So they're not genuinely putting Bitcoin nodes across the world. What they're doing is setting up AWS instances, which is basically renting a server. They were probably doing that anyway as part of their service to decrease the latency of deposits in their exchange. Right? It was probably a necessary part. The reason why that this project is so important is that I'm giving other people jurisdictional control and domicility over that node. Like, it's yours, you're in charge of it. I don't have any software on there that like contacts me or tells me what you're doing. You have to use it. It's your responsibility now. And that's what this is about, getting people to take responsibility. And on the point of the Python library, there is also, I understand, although I haven't used it yet, I must confess, Peter Todd's PyLib, a Python Bitcoin library, okay? And this is, I'm planning on having a play around with this. I have to admit that my Python is a little bit, it's not great. You know, I've done a couple of tutorials and so on over the years, and I know it at a very basic level, but I don't know it well enough, and hopefully we can get Oliver on here. Oliver, I've seen a couple of your comments in the chat. Thank you very much for taking part. It's really good to have you around, because maybe you can give us some tutorials, or give us some examples of how to use Peter Todd's Bitcoin Python library. Once you get up and running, I think you have a full node already. You mentioned that you were mining. So yeah, if you want to go take a look at that, that's github.com/Peter Todd. Let me just bring it up back here. And I know Peter as well, and we can, maybe have a chat with him, because what's really cool is that then that gives you really, really low-level access to Bitcoin. You can dig into all the transactions. You can do a great thing called create raw transaction, where you can actually put ASCII characters into using hexadecimal into the op return space in Bitcoin, which means that if you're an inventor, you can timestamp your inventions. If you're a journalist, you can timestamp the IPFS links into Bitcoin's blockchain, and so that if somebody tries to exercise editorial control or tries to censor you, it's too late already. Only one other person in the world needs to receive that link, and now it's too late. You've got a backup somewhere else on someone else's computer. They share it with a few more people, and then those people act as a backup for that file. And again, that's another layer you've got to take down. If you're a government or if you're an agency that wants to take a particular critical article down, it's going to get very, very difficult for you to do that. As we do venture into this brave new world, we do have to understand there's another side to this kind of freedom. And that is, what do you do if some information gets out that you actually, for genuine reasons, need to take down? Like, for example, the blackmail market right now, which is burgeoning, where an individual will hold someone to ransom and say, look, if you don't give me this money, I'm going to release this embarrassing information about you, and then there's nothing you can do about it. Now, my personal argument is we're already there. We've already got the darknet. We already had the pictures of Jennifer Lawrence that got leaked. There was still nothing she could do about it, right? The Michelle Obama, the picture of her that was very unflattering and that was morphed into something that looks fairly racist a few years ago, she couldn't take it down, right? These are the most powerful people in the world with a lot of money at their disposal, and they can't take it down. The internet already is permanent. It's just only permanent for a few people. And they do that by obscuring the truth and by controlling the headlines. If you control what's on the top, you control where people look, because everyone has discretionary attention. We've only got so many hours in a day that we can pay attention to things. So if you control what's on the surface, most people don't look beyond the surface, you are essentially controlling the world. But at the sacrifice is that you ignore the real issues which are under the hood, which then often bubble up and come as a surprise to many people. So yeah, there are many sides to this debate. It's going to be a highly ethical one. And you're going to have your wits about you, because ethics is a process, not a destination. You never finally reach somewhere like, yes, I know all the right things. I know exactly what to do in every situation. Every situation is going to be unique. You need to respond uniquely to every unique situation. And there is no rule book. I'm sorry to tell you, there is no rule book that you can go to which will tell you what, I see here from the guidelines that I have to respond like this now. And you'd have to take responsibility because the book told you to do it or something, So yeah, so guys, any final thoughts before I just go into the last two things that I wanted to say here on air tonight?
Actually, I'm going to have to sign off, but thanks a lot for having me. I want to wish everyone Happy New Year. And those are the final thoughts. The final thoughts are, keep on trucking, keep using ProTip, don't forget to eat, Chris. And that's about all. Okay, yeah, talk to you later.
Thank you very much. And I just want to add that I am eating, and the point I was trying to make earlier was I was eating affordably. But the compromise is that when you eat cheaply, particularly in the UK, is often the salt content in your food is higher, because the cheaper the food gets, the more they like to, flavor it and make it taste nice, and as a result, you end up with high salt content, which is why I need to take potassium supplement, because potassium is also an electrolyte. It rebalances the salt, because the way your body controls sodium and potassium in the body is with the water levels. You understand, you expel water from your body, we won't go into any details, and that then decreases the amount of saline in your body, it increases the amount of saline in your body, and then when you drink water, that decreases by diluting the saline in your body. Or if some people say like, oh, just reduce, you have to reduce the salt in your diet, well, that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is just simply to have more potassium in your diet. And that will effectively have the same thing as lowering your salt content, because you are effectively diluting the salt down. It's really to do with the ratios between the electrolytes, between the salt and the potassium. So there's a quick biology lesson for you. So Gabriel, if you don't mind, I'm just going to jump into these last two things, and there'll still be some time for us to discuss them. I wanted to show everybody this cool project to my very own. It's actually, the domain name is actually .org. There's also .co.uk. I've just been in touch with Steve Douglas, who contacted me before Christmas to say that he had come up with an Open Provenance model, a specification or a protocol. This is a breaking story, actually. This is an exclusive. We haven't heard from him yet, publicly anyway. And he has been emailing me and Skyping me over Christmas to say, I've been working on this and I've come up with the specification here, which I think allows somebody using a system similar to the World Citizenship project that I did some years ago now, to allow them to prove that they own a piece of artwork, and for them to be able to transfer ownership of that artwork using nothing but open source available tools. Okay, so no big funding round, no millions of dollars necessary. You can do this using Coinbin, I think it's called. I'll have to double check the actual domain name. There's also some screenshots here. Yeah. So Coinbin, which is coinb.in, has all these wonderful tools. You can actually download it locally and run it locally from your machine. You don't have to be dependent on them or their server. Of course, the code will all be open source. You'll be able to see it. And this will essentially allow you to see how this has code. There is some scary stuff here if you're a non-technical person, but it's just got that right level of complexity where it's not so complicated that a weekend warrior couldn't just, check this out and have a go over the weekend and see if they couldn't get it working. And this is technology done really well when the documentation is clear and concise, and everything kind of makes sense. Like, here is a step-by-step process of how I proved that I was the owner of a particular public key, and how I was able to create a camera raw image using my camera and timestamp that and say that I'm the author and these are my terms of usage and all this kind of thing. So it really is a very good way of laying out a specification. I plan on helping Steve. I also have the worldcitizen.id, which is a domain name that I have, which I'm going to use to start listing if I'm successful. I've given myself a lot to do here over this year, but hopefully I will be able to put some of this ID software, or at least the specification, if not the software itself, onto the Fullnode, so that when we start distributing them to places like Botswana, Argentina, Brazil, India, and so forth, that people in this country will have self-sovereignty. With this little box, they'll have financial services, they'll have publishing services, and finally, the last piece of the jigsaw is identity services. The ability for them to self-serve their own identity, so that they don't have to wait for a government to give them permission to exist. They give themselves permission to exist. I assert my identity for myself independently as a breathing, conscious entity. I don't need to wait for another group of people to tell me I can do that beforehand. And then it's up to other people, other recipients in the universe, to be able to say, actually, I don't just respect your right to be human, I like your work and I want to see more of it, which means I'm going to send you money for that work that you've already done. And we're going to make that process as simple and as peer-to-peer as possible. I mean, there are 3 billion people on the planet. Somewhere out there, there is somebody or a group of people actually that want what you have to give. All you've got to do is publicize that fact. And it will be very, very easy for you to be discovered because there are 3 billion people watching. That's a very large addressable audience. And what that does actually is it cures a lot of problems in the world. If only we could get out of our own way and actually build this shit, because it's going to happen anyway. It's just a question of time. So what are you going to do? You're going to go to Silicon Valley, maybe you're going to do some drugs, you go to some conferences, have a good time, or are you just going to do the work? and then worry about what can't, worry about your reward later, So I really am down with what Steve's doing. He hasn't finished it yet. I believe there is still some more work to do on it, but it's looking really good, and the link is at the bottom of this description, which leaves me with one last thing to go into. Before I do, Gabriel, what are your thoughts on provenance and the prospects for what we might get with blockchains and the ability for people to use zero-knowledge proof to prove that they own a particular piece of work?
It's kind of like a landslide, is how I might describe it. I mean, it's so incredibly paradigm crushing and huge, new, totally unknown to most people paradigm creating, that it's almost it's mind-boggling. I can't even summarize just how important the ability to create a repository of agreed-upon truth that hasn't existed yet until 2009, and the fact that it exists now is such a radical change in human culture and society that it's just impossible to sum up. So I love everything that you're saying. I am a little bit curious. We don't have to go into this now, but I'm curious to know how you hook up, physical reality to the blockchain. How do you make a hash that represents the artwork? Then you say, hey, I have this. But it is something that's scarce. In other words, a sculpture is scarce. There's only one of them. There's only those set of atoms, and that's it. So I think that money and trade protocols will definitely come into play for that usage, for sure.
Yeah, that's right. And as we've said, the project isn't finished, and one of the things I do want to get done this year is to be able to write a specification that deals with the handling of biometric information on the blockchain. I think there are too many dangerous people entering this arena that have, let's say, very narrow-minded objectives. They have agendas, they want to make money, and one of the ways of making money is to persist data, personal identifiable information for investors and large governments. And you might think, well, that's okay because I like my government. Yeah, but you don't get to choose the next one, and you don't necessarily get to live under a nice regime. Like, we had that user in Libya who had his ChangeTip account shut down. His crime was having an IP address that fell on the ban list for the US agencies. And of course, when you run a service, you're always going to be at risk of having that liability. It's not in the business interests of ChangeTip to be shutting down people in Libya. They don't want it. They don't want anything to do with this feud between the two countries. It's just that they're running a service, and therefore they become addressable. And that means that someone can knock on your door because they've got an address. They've got somewhere they can go. They've been deputized by some greater power. And as Plato said in Laws, his last work, his most prolific work, is that organized structures tend to collapse in on less organized ones. And this is what tends to happen, is that when you set up a business, it gives the government the ability to exert more control than they would otherwise have. That's why VAT, sales tax, is one of the most popular forms of tax revenue now for government, because they can deputize these companies and force them to charge an extra 17 or 20% on top of the regular retail price. And they can force those businesses to pay that every quarter or every year, because they'll put them out of business if they can't, and they won't be able to trade anymore. And that forces citizens to pay taxes that they otherwise wouldn't pay on a self-declaration income tax form, right? And so now and the problem with sales tax, as we know, is that it has the same effect on rich people as it has on poor people. Or, sorry, not the same effect. People who are very poor have to pay just as much as rich people have to pay, even though rich people have more money and they can afford to pay. It's not a proportion of your income, it's independent of your income, and therefore is regressional as a means of tax. And it's therefore, some would argue, not a very fair thing to do, because the same rules are not applying in the same way everywhere, as Blake Anderson often says. That is the definition of fairness, as he likes to put it. So we're trying to redress that. We're trying to give people the same set of rules to play by everywhere. And that's what happens when you download the Bitcoin software. You're playing by the same rules that everyone else is playing by. It's essentially a contract. As soon as you open up that Bitcoin client, you're entering into a smart contract, often called. And that contract is that here's the Genesis block. We all know the hash of the Genesis block, and we know the hash of the latest software thanks to the coders who've published it and have said, this is my PGP key, I'm signing this hash, this is the code as I've written it. You can look at the code on GitHub if you want to inspect it. Other smart people have, maybe there's somebody you know who's very smart who can inspect it for you. You run this, and you are performing the same pattern of behavior. Your CPU is chiming with the same pattern that every other CPU on the planet is chiming with. You are downloading every single transaction, which has the same hash as everybody else gets, and you are getting the same Merkle root as everyone else. And you are able to compare that independently to different sources and say, are you looking at the same version of history that I'm looking at? Because this is the sequence of events that I got, and is this the same as the sequence of events that you got? Yes, it is. Like Einstein said near the end of his life, when I look away from the moon doesn't go away. It's still there. There is something intuitive that we know about it. Quantum mechanics might disagree, but the fact is that when I don't look at the moon is still there. And that's what we have to treat our financial system. When we look away, they can't start hypothecating and inventing new money and start distributing all over the world whilst we're not there just because we can't look. Because then every time we go up to the cash machine, we're essentially approaching a slot machine. We're approaching a chancing device where maybe I'll get my money, maybe I won't, because all I'm really looking at are pixels on a screen. I'm not looking at the hard material facts. When you're looking at a Bitcoin transaction, you know that transaction is real because consensus. And consensus, as Gadamer defined it, is that which cannot be overthrown, even in the presence of misunderstanding, even when we disagree about syntax and the way things are. I could say the sky is pink, and what would be true is that I made a claim about such a thing as a sky, that it has such a hue as a color pink. And the more we disagree about it, Gadamer says, the more we affirm that once I made a claim about a thing called a sky, and that it had such a thing as a hue, and that hue was pink, okay? It doesn't mean that the sky is pink, it just means I made the claim the sky was pink. That's consensus. And a lot of people find it very difficult, very taxing to get their head around it. A lot of smart people, a lot of people on the developer mailing list find it very difficult to get their head around this. But as we're seeing, the Bitcoin XT forking attempt has not worked. I didn't, as many people know, there's some in the comments, people have said XT. You can run XT on this full node. I'm not going to install XT on this full node because it's frankly a waste of my time. You are welcome to do that. I can sell you the full node. I take requests from people. If you want to send a request and say, I'd like XT, what I'm prepared to do, of course, is just give you the full node and everything around it. I just won't, you'll just have to install XT for yourself, partly because I haven't tried installing XT and it's a waste of my time trying. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I don't have robust objections to BIP 101 per se. I was actually in favor of it initially, but when I realized that there were other intentions and Bitcoin XT wasn't just block size increase, it was also, let's downgrade some Tor exit nodes and let's do some other things, I was like, okay, then this is not pure engineering, this is politics now, this is power play. And essentially what you're trying to do, like you're trying to alienate people, because as soon as you try having an opinion on the block size debate, you're instantly put into a category and you're told, oh, you must be a shill for this company. And it's like, no, I'm not. I just got here. I just looked at the evidence and I formed an opinion. It's not final or anything. I'm not being paid by anyone. And this is the problem, is it creates division between people and it violates friendship. And if philosophy is about anything, it's about friendship. It's really about how we can disagree and still remain friends and still have a debate so that we can love wisdom itself. And if we can't disagree and maintain respect for one another, then I don't think we're going to get very far, because we're not going to be able to collaborate. So anyway, sorry, that was a big rant. Gabriel, final thoughts? What are you up to? What are you thinking?
I love that rant. You've done several today that have been so inspiring. I just love it. No, I don't think I have anything to add. It's fantastic. I love what you've done with ProTip, and I can't wait to order my full node as soon as I am able. And I will say something. I went to the UK 10 years ago, and I was in London and Surrey, and I had some of the worst food I've had in my whole life. I had some decent food as well, but my recent trip to Yorkshire, man, I had a lot of delicious, incredibly good salty food over there. It was like pies, and I had a lot of amazing food. So, yeah, watch the salt, though.
Yeah, our food, public food in this country is abysmal, and I really hate it. And I usually try to take things with me, food with me whenever I go. So that really just leaves me with two more things to say, just briefly. That yes, the rumors are true, that I am thinking of building a Dash full node, or a Masternode, or a relay at least. I haven't had the mind space yet to really look into it, but I have been on the Dash forum. This is because actually more than one person approached me and said, oh, by the way, Dash looks really cool. It used to be called Darkcoin. And they've got some incentives that incentivize people to run full nodes or master nodes because they have to put down a deposit and then they get remunerated. So I was like, okay. So I looked at it and I was like reasonably impressed. I like the energy on the forum. Obviously, there are a lot of trolls on the forum, but this is crypto, so we expect that, and I don't mind. I actually embrace the trolls. And so yes, if I get the time in the next few weeks, I will definitely sit down with a full node and see if I can put Dash on there. There probably won't be room to put Bitcoin and Dash on the same device because we're already finding that Bitcoin is very hungry for memory. But yeah, I don't see why not. And I don't necessarily have to run that or be in charge of that. I can just do the documentation, do a bit of championing on social media, and then maybe someone in the Dash community can really promote it. Because once we've made the ISO images, the disk images for the memory cards, it really is easy after that. You don't have to do very much. You need to okay, yes, you do need to go into the command line. I'm sorry. But you only have to type in a very, very simple DD command, which is direct to disk. You just write an ISO image from one part from your hard drive to a memory stick. An ISO image is a little bit like a zip file, but it's not compressed, but it contains the file contents of a file system inside of it, and you can use that to write your disk. So essentially you're taking a snapshot in space-time of like a particular state on a memory card. This is how Linux full node was set up. I have Bitcoin here, and you can set it up byte for byte the same way that I set it up in my flat. And then you get the same copy in your space. You don't have to buy a full node off me. You can just download the image, buy your own hardware, follow my instructions, DD the ISO image to your memory card, and then you're basically up and running just like that. So it doesn't really require me after that. If anything, the duty of an entrepreneur should be to put themselves out of a job eventually. You're so entrepreneurial that not only did you have the ability to anticipate demand in this market, but you had confidence in yourself to anticipate demand going into the future. And so you didn't need to be paying yourself all this money and taking this VC funding and so forth. And that brings me to my last and not least story, which is my wonderful girlfriend, Janine-Karina, is a journalist, and she's writing a lot. And one of the things she wrote about was the must-see 32C3 talks. This woman is amazing. She knows everything about WikiLeaks. She knows everything about Snowden. She knows everything about all this kind of stuff, and she's very, very knowledgeable in this community. And I felt like, yeah, she needs some promotion, so I'm going to give her promotion. And that's very nepotistic of me, but I don't care. So you should come here. The link is in the description below. She's written a really, really good summary of the Hamburg conference, the Chaos Communication Conference, and she listed the top 10 list. I don't even know if I'm in this list. I might not be in this list, or I may. Oh no, she did. There was a bit of nepotism on her part as well. I did make it into the list, and there I am, the bonus full node IPFS live stream that I did in front of actually quite a big crowd of people that came down to us in Hall 4, where we did a live stream demo. It was also recorded in HD thanks to Ryan Taylor at Alexandria. Thanks a lot, Ryan, for doing that. Hopefully I should be able to get that uploaded this week. And yeah, so if you want to see all the best talks, you just want to see a summary, that link is in the description below. Thanks very much for your time, everyone. As always, this was just me to check in to say that I will be resuming production of the full nodes. Got plenty of memory cards. I've got more on the way. Not all the materials are here yet. I haven't yet uploaded the new crowdfunding page. That's because I haven't decided where I'm doing it. I might do it on Indiegogo at the same time as StartJoin. I might also be able to generate my own crowdfunding page on the ProTip website, but I am seeking help with that. So if you're a front-end developer and you're able to help us set up like a Bitcoin wallet and do all that stuff on the ProTip website, we'd love to be able to take Bitcoin donations directly. But yeah, like I say, I can only do so much on my own. So I am seeking the support of other people to be able to help us set up, a nice page on the ProTip website where we can receive funds and people can order the full nodes. And yeah, probably in the next sort of week to 2 weeks, I will have set up either an Indiegogo campaign and or a StartJoin page. I haven't quite decided yet. So watch this space. You can follow me at Mr. Chris Ellis. Gabriel, where can people find you?
Twitter is the best place, at Gabriel D. Vine.
That's great. And thanks very much, man. The last man standing. We're the last people here. Thank you to all of you who've been putting comments in the descriptions in the chat room, also down the bottom right corner of the screen. Sorry, I didn't get time to read those. It's just that Google doesn't actually give you a very easy way of reading them. But in time, we will get better at that. So thanks a lot, everybody, and Happy New Year, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.